Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame football podcast on the planet. As Marcus Freeman just got some of the best news he could have got this week in the last 2 hours, and that is the basketball team just signed a five-star recruit. So we're all about basketball these days, fellas.
Uh,
Coffee, I'm going to start with you with that lead in.
of course.
Quick question, honest
Yes.
to God feedback from you. With about 3 minutes to go in the second half of the last home game, were you thinking to yourself this was the end of the Riley Leonard era and Steve Angeli or Carr was going to be walking out at the start of the second half?
You know what? I was there for the first half of the game, watching live until I must admit I was a complete wuss and the sun beating down on us. We kind of did other stuff for the second half. But anyway, up until I saw that pass to Bo Collins, that literally happened not right in front of us, but that was the end zone where our seats were. And when you see him making a play like that, you can kind of see, well, maybe that's what the coaches are seeing in practice because that was an absolutely beautiful play. Unfortunately, it was kind of counterbalanced by like the 10 or 15 head scratching plays that were there. I mean, from friends of mine who watched the game remotely, they said if you ignore the first quarter, he actually had a pretty good game, which to me is one of those other than that, Mrs. Lincoln kind of things. But I think uh, right now, I still believe it's his mobility that is keeping him in the starting position because I remember watching Angeli during the Purdue game and those sacks that he took was just you can't that's not something you can do. So I think what the coaches are saying right now is they will cross their fingers and hope we're going to see more of the Bo Collins type passes and the type of runs he was making, including the 50-yarder for the last touchdown and
Yeah.
accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative, so to
Yeah,
speak.
no, I think that's exactly right. And I've always been a firm believer that after the third game of the year, you kind of know what you have.
Oh yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's pretty obvious that in Riley Leonard, I think we're now at a point where what we need is like 250 yards of total offense out of him. And however we get there, it doesn't matter. But he's got to contribute at least 250 for us to be successful. And what you did see on Saturday is he's an elite runner. There's no doubt about that. For some reason, he's got the ability to just make the first guy miss, and that's not normal for a quarterback to possess that. And he makes up for his I'm going to say lack of confidence because I think he's got the skills. For whatever reason, he's just lacking confidence on his throws. And if somehow that gets fixed, holy cow, look out. But at the moment, if we could just get production out of him that's 250 plus, we're in a good spot.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I heard an interview with Mike Golick Jr. today. He's talking about how he saw firsthand, Riley Leonard, slinging it around at Duke, with some accuracy and some. So that's I think that's why we're sort of hanging in there with him because there's evidence that that he can do this. But when you see him miss so many layups, I guess that's the new vernacular for sort of short passes, dumps and dinks and stuff.
Yeah.
It's really concerning because those are the plays that sustain drives, move the chains. In a way, like I would certainly trade 7 or 8 of those, for one sort of perfect Bo Collins, deep ball a game, because I think overall this team has a better chance of winning if they possess the ball. This is not, necessarily. I mean, against Purdue, it was a quick strike offense, but I don't think that's what we're going to see against most, against decent opponents. I think at the end of the year, we're going to look back and be like, whoa, Purdue, like start over.
Yeah.
um, but, um, but, jumping ahead a little bit, I mean, this weekend is this weekend is, I don't know how you could, you know, sort of describe it as anything other than pivotal, and sort of huge, and whatever big adjective you want to use for this season, for Riley Leonard, for Marcus Freeman, for the program as a whole, for recruiting. I mean, it's a big deal because if they go down in flames Saturday, that's the playoff, hopes out the window. You're already seeing sort of cracks in college football programs everywhere, whether it's, Jaden Mickey deciding that, after the third game of the season, he's going to check out,
Yeah.
and, or the quarterback at UNLV today deciding that they didn't pony up the cash that they told they were going to, so he's going to check out, and they actually could end up in a playoff.
It's
So it's crazy, and things could go south in a hurry. It's going to be much harder for coaches to keep sort of playoff potential teams together. I would not want to be sort of Mike Norvell right now, in the Florida State program, in the Florida State locker room. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's disarray.
it's got to be. Yeah.
Right. And you've got a lot of people who said they were going to stroke checks to these guys who are probably thinking about reneging on their, no, seriously, I mean,
No, I'm sure.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
If the check hasn't been cut, it's like, well, wait a
right.
minute.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
it could get ugly in a hurry. And I don't know, based on what my eyes have seen after 3 games, I think there's just as good a chance that it could get ugly as that they could, get a W and move on, kind of survive in advance. Cause that's kind of what the mode they're in right now, right? They just got to get W one way or another. That's what we said before week 1. And that's what it's like this Saturday. It doesn't really matter how, but, they've got to figure out a way to send Louisville home with an L. And even if it's ugly, even if it's difficult, and even if it's in overtime, whatever it is,
Yeah.
the alternative is just too tough to contemplate.
Yep. No, I'm with you there. Coffee. I'm echoing what Ed's saying. I mean, this weekend is an absolute must win if there ever was one. But the stakes are obviously high. It's a home game. We've had 2 games so far where the fans are booing. That's a whole different matter. But the reality of the matter is, this is where you got to separate yourself. This is where the game plan of what you put together that puts you in situations of one-on-ones that you've seen through film, and you either execute on those one-on-ones or you don't. So I think the pressure's on Riley Leonard to execute those situations where there's isolation, and it's going to have to be with some wide receivers. Louisville is going to go man up. I promise you that. You're not going to see a lot of zone coverage. And so they're going to make us beat them. And so the pressure's on. I think this is going to be a fascinating game.
No, absolutely. And I think, as you said, if you get to this point in the season, you really do know what you have. And I don't know whether that Freeman and Denrock are just kind of holding out hope that Leonard takes that, like the light comes on and he can take that extra step that what they're hopefully like seeing in practice and whatnot. I mean, I certainly hope so. I think you've got a team in Louisville that this is their first road game. 2 of their 3 opening opponents were tomato cans, and Georgia Tech's a decent team, but again, they haven't had to go on the road yet. And I have no doubt that their defense is going to be quality, but I think Notre Dame's defense is going to have a better time against their offense because Louisville lacks the on the ground road grader that they had last year that our defensive line seems to always have problems with. I think Notre Dame's secondary is going to actually make more of a difference in this game than any part of the team is. But I do agree that this is when Notre Dame needs to start separating itself. They don't have enough quality games left on the schedule to really overcome if they lose. I mean, if they lose this one, there's no playoffs. And
Yeah.
then
Yep.
you see what happens the rest of the year, which like you said, might not be pretty anyway. So
Yeah. No, it's a must-win situation. But the thing that's going to be interesting for me is the game plan that Notre Dame puts together offensively, because I think there's an argument to be made that if Louisville is going to say to us, all right, you're going to have to beat us and you're going to have to beat us throwing the football. Well, that assumes that you can stop Riley Leonard running the football. And even with 8 guys in the box, all it takes is for Riley to make one guy miss, and there's 4 or 5 yards. So in doing that, you tend to create scenarios where Louisville's not expecting it. And I think it is going to come down to that. It's going to be how well does Notre Dame run the football? Because if we can't run the football, we're going to be in deep trouble. It's going to be a real problem for us the whole game. And I just think if we orchestrate some of these situations that you see on film where, all right, in this formation, we know we got a one-on-one on the outside on an RPO, so therefore we're going to do it. That's the stuff that's gonna dictate how this game goes and how well that orchestration is. But man, the thing you don't know about is just the way the game goes. Whether there's a turnover early or anything like that. Ed, I think Coffey's point is a good one. I expect the defense, even though Louisville's got some elite wideouts, and they do, I kind of think we're going to man up on them as well. I'm not afraid that Louisville's going to put 24, 31 points on the board. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm actually more, I'm actually less concerned about sort of what Leonard does. I mean, I think what he does combined with our defense is enough to win the game. What I'm concerned about is just, we have to play just a much cleaner game than we have. The first week it was penalties. The second week it was turnovers. This past week it was a little both. um, so we just have to play more sound sort of basic football. Not turn the ball over, not make inopportune penalties at the worst time. Hang on to the football, especially if you're Riley Leonard in the pocket, or if you're Riley Leonard running the ball, or if you're, I mean, those are the kind of things that really sort of catch up with you in close games against a decent opponent, which Louisville is. So, and I do think that they have, to be frank, I think they have an advantage in the HFC department. I think they've got a good head football coach, a smart one and a tough one, and one that has more experience than Marcus Freeman, and has proven himself, I think, to be a better coach so far than Marcus Freeman. So, it's a growth game for Freeman. I'm still sort of baffled by Denbrock against Northern Illinois. I just don't. That game is just inexplicable to me, sort of how it happened and how Notre Dame lost. But he and Golden have to bring their best stuff as always. But it's on Freeman if the team isn't ready to play and has kind of a first quarter like it did this past weekend. Because it won't be 3-0 or 0-0 if they do. It'll be 14-0, or
Yeah.
it'll be 17-0 or something. So they can't come out flat.
No, I think you're right about that. I mean, I personally myself, I kind of think that the way the first quarter ends is the way the game is going to go. If we come out flat, look out, we're in trouble. I think Notre Dame's got to come out right from the get-go and establish some identity there. And it's going to be critical that we get up quickly and early, because I do think if we get 2 scores behind, it's going to put an awful lot of pressure on not only Denbrock, but on Riley Leonard as well. I mean, it's going to be absolute mistake-free football to get us back in the game and hopefully pull it out towards the end. But I think if we can find some success early, the defense can take advantage of that and be a little bit more aggressive, maybe a little bit more gambling on some of these routes that they jump. And we have been doing a really good job of that. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about is the DB play at Notre Dame is something different than we've seen in the last, I think, 20 years. I mean, the number of routes that we jump now that we just never seemed to do previously, especially on big downs, on third and fours. We got guys jumping the route and they're timing it perfectly. And you just never saw that previously. We've never been that aggressive.
Well, it seems like they're playing the ball a lot more instead of the man.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it had been frustrating for years, right? You'd have, we'd get either a PI call or, you know,
yeah,
or lose a 50-50 ball because our heads would get beat turned the wrong way. We weren't tracking the
Mhm.
ball, we were tracking the guy. And
Yep.
that just was so frustrating, especially when it happened in the red zone. We'd give up
yep,
so many touchdowns in that regard. Just one thing real quick. To me, Louisville in this ACC era, they sort of remind me of Michigan State back in the day in terms of their sort of games with Notre Dame. They're always pretty athletic. They've got
yeah,
some athletes. Um, they're um, they play with emotion in the sense that I remember, Michigan State, when you would, if you didn't stomp on them early, it was going to be a long game and it was going to be it could be a long night. Remember that streak that we
yeah.
had where, we'd play Michigan State at night and it just did not go well, over the
Mhm.
course of about a decade. Louisville kind of strikes me the same way. And so it's one of those, there's just certain opponents that kind of stick in your craw. And, Louisville is one of those. Like when you think of the ACC, they just seem like have a little different makeup. They're a little bit more thuggish than the rest of the ACC. They're a little bit grittier. Notre Dame has not had, trouble really with, for the most part, with the Dukes and the Virginias and the Wake Forests and the, some of the other schools, but Louisville is sort of different. And so I'm
They're more Midwest.
yeah, I'm a little worried about, not a little worried, I'm a lot worried about Saturday, frankly. And and I take comfort in Mike Coffey's words about, who they played so far and sort of, they haven't gone on the road yet, and those things are, those are really good points. And so I hope, I feel a lot better, I guess, if it was going to be like, you know, 38 degrees on Saturday, but it's not.
Right.
um, so, so we'll see. I mean, it's going to be, they can't, I think it's going to be really rough if they get behind.
Yeah, I
I
agree with
think
you. I
they've got to play with the lead the whole game.
But it's going to be really critical to get started and get going right away. And, penalties is a major concern. I'm with you there. Turnovers, another one. I mean, I hate to say it, but those are the two things you look at that reflect on coaching.
Yep.
And it's just the way that the world is. I mean, teams that are undisciplined create penalties, and teams that are not disciplined in the fundamentals make mistakes like coughing up the football. And as much as I'm excited about what I've seen, there's concerns that show up that you're like, man, how do you fumble the football on the 1 yard line when you're going in to score?
Right.
Like, there's a mentality you create as a running back that inside the 5, nobody takes the football. Nobody. That
Mhm.
Right.
doesn't happen.
Right.
So how is it that you're crossing the goal line and the ball gets knocked out of your hands?
Right.
That should never happen.
Right.
And that's a mentality thing. That is nothing but mentality.
Right.
That's not somebody making a great play. That's you not doing your job
Right.
and protecting
Mhm.
the football. That's what
Right.
happened.
And by the
Well,
same token, coaches preach playing to the whistle, and there was evidence of that
Yeah.
coaching getting through because Wagner jumped on that ball, right?
Yep.
So even though probably from the perspective of an offensive lineman on that play, it'd be very easy just to sort of give up on the play because it looks
Yeah.
like the running back is
They called the
crossing the goal line.
touchdown.
That's
Yeah.
right.
mhm.
It's a touchdown.
Yeah.
But that did not happen. He completed the play,
Yep.
and so that's an example of coaching being taken and having an impact, right? Because
Yep.
who among us wouldn't kind of, when like if you're playing in the backyard and you see somebody that's, heading for the goal line, I mean, you stop. You're
Yeah.
not gonna,
Yeah.
so but I agree, and it just, that type of thing has to be, in other words, the the mistake has to be the rare exception, and the rule has to be not making those mistakes, completing plays, playing to the whistle, not doing what, you know Aiden, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his first name, Schuler
Yeah.
does.
Mhm.
And and the thing that I think really pissed Freeman off is because he actually was coaching that to perfection in terms of getting the ball back
He
before
was.
halftime,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely was.
Yeah.
He was doing exactly what he should do, what we want him to do, what the book says, what instinct says. And they actually had a little momentum, because hadn't they scored just like in the
Yeah.
last couple
Yeah.
minutes
Yeah.
before that? Yeah. So, and so when a player sort of goes off the deep end, does something really stupid like that. I mean, I empathize with Freeman in those
Oh, yeah.
situations. I'm not quite sure I would have been telling him I loved him, and getting square with him that soon. It might have been Wednesday before I was able to look at
Yeah.
him.
I was, it's a
So
great point you
Well,
make. Ed, I wanted to make that point, Coffee, because you made this comment earlier in the year that you were concerned that Freeman was a little too much friends with the players. But to Ed's point, I couldn't agree with you 100% more. He went to Schuler to then make up with them before the half even ended. I mean, there was a minute left on the clock when that idiot play was made.
yeah,
Why not let the kid make another great play and then tell him, "Hey, man, that's what I want you to do.
sure. No
That's what
doubt.
I'm looking for out of you. Don't go
And
to let him simmer for a while. Don't give him a hug after he just did it 30 seconds
yeah,
ago."
yeah, and I think you've made the point previously how frustrating it is where Notre Dame will go down and score, and then like almost on the next play, the defense just doesn't get the three and out we need. And we were just about to get that three and
right,
out that we
right.
needed,
Yeah.
and Schuler just does something intergalactically stupid. And it did bother me that, I mean, like you said, Freeman should have let him simmer for a while and said, listen, you screwed that up. I would have taken him out for a couple plays and just said, tell you what, convince me at halftime that I should put you back in after that really
Yeah.
dumb thing that you did. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're not going to be well served with Marcus Freeman trying to be someone he's not. We just have to figure out whether the coach that he is enough to get us where we want to be. And we still have the question marks, but at this point, I will take the wins as long as they are learning experiences and things are learned from and not repeated.
Yeah.
I remember so clearly. I mean, to me, one of the best books ever written about Notre Dame football, Era of Era. And Harsigan had a line, when something like that happened, where, the kid would come off the field and he would scream at him, you aren't worth 15 fucking yards to this football team,
Right.
Mhm.
and then the kid would sit and sit and
Yep.
sit. But of course, he had unlimited depth and, a roster of 150, 5 stars basically. Uh,
True.
but what's so funny about it is that, you know, uh, Parsegian also, had a Freeman side where he was not the kind of guy where you could say something. Whereas later on in the year, I think in the book says that same season, um, he got a 15-yard, unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for yelling at a ref on the sidelines, and in the team meeting the next day, I can't remember if it was Dave Casper, one of the smartasses said, coach, you aren't worth 15 yards to this football team. And he thought it was funny, but
Yeah.
to me, the time to laugh is 24 hours later after a win.
No doubt.
It's not like
No
30
doubt.
seconds later,
Yeah, that's right.
saying,
Yeah.
I love you. And, everything's going to be okay. I mean, to me,
Yeah. No,
but again, that's more a reflection of our generation probably than it is sort of,
maybe.
Yeah,
you know,
you gotta just hope that Freeman knows what he's doing. He knows that that was the right time to do it because of the relationship he has with the kid. You just gotta make all those assumptions, but it's easy for us on the outside to see that and be like, "Oh my God, I would never do that." I would be like, "No way, man. Maybe after halftime, I might say something to you."
Yeah.
I do feel bad for coaches in that situation because you know that they harp on those things.
Oh
It's not
yeah,
like they
for
don't
sure.
talk to those kids
No,
about
that's
this
right.
thing,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, over and over and over again. And I think
Yep.
that when something like that happens, it's just got to be the most exasperating thing in the world.
It's frustrating. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's when
Yeah.
you got to, like, 18, 19, 20-year olds.
Yep.
That's who you're dealing
Yep.
with.
That's
So
right. Yep.
Mhm.
All right, let's jump to predictions. What do you think?
I was nervous last week when I said I knew Notre Dame wasn't going to give up more than 10 points, but I wasn't sure how many we were going to score. And I wish I knew where I read it, but there was a post on one of the various message boards, probably one of ours, that talked about or copied some stats from the four quarterbacks that Notre Dame has faced this year, and none of them have had a good day. None of them. And I think that's going to happen again. I think the light's going to shine. I picked us to win 31-10.
There you go. I like that. Ed, what do you think?
yeah, no, I listen. I like that. I mean, I also like being wrong, and I just have a sort of a queasy feeling. And I think I'm not 1,000% sold on our defense. I know that probably sounds like heresy, but I just feel like it could be exploited. I'm not. I mean, I'm underwhelmed by Cross and Mills this year. I think the absence of Botello um, is maybe a little bit more important than we think. So I'm going to say, Louisville wins 27-22.
Ooh, ouch. Well,
Hey,
I
I'm
think
right at a
there's,
basketball recruiting high, so
yeah, there you go. And we'll be talking basketball next week.
Right.
I kind of, the strange thing for me is that Marcus Freeman has been in this weird situation multiple times where it's kind of a must-win situation. And it's almost like, oh my God, if we lose this, the wheels are going to come off. And every single time he finds a way to win, whether it's USC, whether it's, Florida State, no matter what, he seems to find a way to just pull out that win when he's up against it. And then his problem is he's losing to the teams he shouldn't when he's not up against it. But I kind of think the same thing's going to happen here. I don't know why. I'm kind of going with that gut instinct. But I think
No,
he's,
I think Yeah, I
I
think
think,
that's a really good. I think that's a really good analysis. You could totally see them winning 31-10 and then
yeah,
losing to Georgia
I can
Tech.
see it. I can see it. And so I think I'm going to lean that way. I'm going to say 34-17. But I think we will pull away late in the second half.
that's what
Um,
I'm thinking.
but I kind of think that for some reason he's going to have them playing at a really high level. I think this is an emotional game. Marcus will be up for it. He's going to get them hot sky high. There's enough players that have elite capability. And I just think they're going to rise to the occasion. They'll do it. I think the next challenge is going to be Georgia Tech. And,
Gotta beat Stanford first.
Stanford, but then Georgia Tech. And I just think those are the games where, okay, you can't really get these guys emotionally high because you're not up against it. You're supposed to win this game. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this plays out. But I ultimately think that he's going to rise to the occasion like he has previously, and they're going to play
Everyone,
well.
everyone get your Peacock subscriptions. That's the only way you're gonna watch
Yeah,
it.
I haven't signed up yet, but I will Friday
Like,
to make sure it's working and everything. I can see the TV.
Oh, I didn't even know that Saturday's game is a Peacock
Yeah,
exclusive.
Peacock
Peacock
only.
only. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that's funny.
It's
Hopefully,
not ha ha funny, but
Yeah.
hopefully Peacock runs in Fargo, North Dakota, and I don't have to worry about not having access to
You'll be fine.
it.
Uh,
All right, good deal.
but
We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Ed Jordanek, Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Brammer. Thanks for listening.